The emergency beacon cut through space like a knife. Its signal bounced off relay stations across 3 star systems before reaching the massive communication array orbiting Earth. The message was simple but desperate. This is Ambassador Tella of the Zelani Confederation. Our worlds are under attack. The Krex Dominion has destroyed 4 of our colonies. They kill everyone. Men, women, children. We have tried to fight, but our ships were built for peace, not war. We beg anyone who can hear this message, please help us. We are dying. The message repeated every 30 seconds. Each time, Ambassador Tella's voice grew weaker. Captain Rodriguez was drinking his morning coffee when the alert came through his console. He set down his cup and listened to the full transmission 3 times. Then he picked up his phone and called Admiral Sarah Chen. Admiral, we have a situation. Sarah Chen had been Earth's military liaison to the galactic community for 12 years. She had watched humanity struggle to find its place among the stars. Most alien species saw humans as violent primitives from a death world. They were polite but distant. They invited Earth to trade meetings but never asked for advice on serious matters. The Zelani were different. They had been kind to human diplomats. Their mathematicians worked with human scientists. Their children sent drawings to Earth schools. Sarah had visited their crystal cities and walked through their floating gardens. They were gentle people who saw beauty in everything. Now they were being slaughtered. Sarah read the report again. The Krex Dominion was a militaristic empire that had been expanding for decades. They would arrive at a peaceful world, demand surrender, and then strip the planet of resources. Anyone who resisted was killed. Anyone who surrendered became a slave. The Galactic Council's response was typical. They would form a committee to study the situation. They would write strongly worded letters to the Krex. They would impose economic sanctions that might take effect in 6 months. By then, the Zelani would be extinct. Sarah picked up her secure phone and started making calls. General Morrison, I need the Pacific Fleet ready to move in 48 hours. Admiral, we can't deploy without Council approval. The paperwork alone will take weeks, and the Zelani don't have weeks. They don't have days. Get me ships, General. I'll handle the politics later. Her next call was to Captain Jake Sullivan of the Merchant Marine. Jake ran a small shipping company that transported goods between Earth and the outer colonies. His ships looked like junk, but they were fast and reliable. Jake, I need a favor. Name it, Admiral. How many of your captains used to be military? About half. Why? Can you retrofit your ships for combat? There was a pause. How much combat? Enough to make the Krex regret attacking peaceful people. Jake laughed. Give me 2 days. My boys have been itching for some excitement. Sarah's third call was to Commander Maria Santos of the Asteroid Mining Consortium. Maria's crews worked in the most dangerous parts of the solar system. They used massive industrial equipment to crack open asteroids and extract valuable minerals. Maria, how would you feel about using your equipment on something other than rocks? Depends on what you have in mind, Admiral. Krex warships. Now you're talking my language. The calls continued through the night. Sarah contacted every human military unit, shipping company, mining operation, and even some groups that operated in the gray areas of space law. The response was always the same. When can we leave? By the second day, Sarah had assembled the most unusual fleet in human history. The Pacific Fleet provided the backbone: 6 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and the carrier Independence. Jake's merchant ships had been hastily fitted with missile pods and laser cannons. Maria's mining vessels carried industrial plasma cutters and explosive charges designed to split asteroids. The strangest addition was the luxury yacht Serendipity, owned by billionaire Marcus Webb. Webb had insisted on joining the mission and had somehow managed to cram torpedo tubes into his pleasure craft. When asked why, he simply said, "The Zelani make the best art in the galaxy. Nobody destroys artists on my watch." The fleet gathered at the jump point to Zelani space, 57 ships of various sizes and capabilities. It wasn't the largest fleet ever assembled, but it was uniquely human. Every captain had volunteered. Every crew member had a reason for being there. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Independence and looked at the tactical display. The Krex had 12 dreadnoughts besieging the Zelani homeworld. Intelligence reports suggested they were preparing for a final assault. Admiral, her communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." "Put it through." The face of Counselor Vex appeared on the main screen. Vex was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes. He looked perpetually worried. Admiral Chen, you must return to Earth immediately. The Council has not authorized military action against the Krex Dominion. This could start a war. Counselor, the war already started when the Krex began killing civilians. We're just evening the odds. You don't understand the political ramifications. The Krex have allies. If you attack them, it could destabilize the entire region. Sarah looked at the tactical display again. The Krex fleet was moving into bombardment position around the Zilani homeworld. Counselor, what would you have me do? Sit here and watch genocide happen because it might be politically inconvenient? Return to Earth. Let the Council handle this through proper diplomatic channels. How long will that take? Vex hesitated. These things require careful consideration. Perhaps 6 months to reach a consensus. The Zilani will be dead in 6 days. Sarah cut the transmission. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, was studying the sensor readings from Zilani space. Admiral, we're getting reports from the forward scouts. The Krex are demanding complete surrender. They've given the Zilani 12 hours to respond. Sarah nodded. How long until we reach their position? At maximum burn, 18 hours. Then we'll be 6 hours too late. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then smiled. Unless we take a shortcut, Admiral. Plot a course directly into the middle of their formation. We're not going to sneak up on them. We're going to appear right in their faces. Park's eyes widened. That's extremely dangerous. If our calculations are off by even a few kilometers, we could materialize inside their ships. The Krex expect us to follow normal tactics, drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, approach cautiously, maybe try to negotiate. They're not expecting us to jump directly into combat range. Sarah opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In 15 hours we will arrive at Zilani space. The enemy has 12 dreadnoughts and expects an easy victory. They are about to learn that humans don't like bullies. Our mission is simple. Protect the innocent. Stop the aggressors. Show the galaxy that Earth stands with those who cannot stand for themselves. She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew, young men and women who had volunteered to travel across the galaxy to help strangers. The Zilani asked for help. They're about to get more than they bargained for. All ships prepare for jump. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change everything. Space around the Zilani homeworld shimmered and twisted. Reality bent as 57 human ships tore through the fabric of hyperspace and emerged directly in the middle of the Krex siege formation. Admiral Chen watched her tactical display light up with contact markers. 12 massive Krex dreadnoughts hung in space around the beautiful blue-green world below. Each ship was over a kilometer long, bristling with weapons and armor. They had been positioned to bombard the planet's major cities. Now they found themselves surrounded. All ships report successful jump completion, Lieutenant Commander Park announced. No collisions, no casualties, Sarah smiled. The hyperspace jump had been risky, but it had worked perfectly. The human fleet had materialized in a sphere around the Krex formation, with the enemy ships caught in the center like fish in a net. Open a channel to the Krex fleet commander. The main screen flickered and displayed the bridge of the Krex flagship. The Krex were insectoid creatures, tall and thin, with forearms and hard carapaces that gleamed under their ship's lights. Their commander stood in the center of the bridge, mandibles clicking in what Sarah assumed was surprise. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to surrender or withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. The Krex commander's mandibles spread wide. Sarah's translation software identified the sound as laughter. Humans? The primitive Deathworlders? You dare threaten the Krex Dominion? The commander's voice was harsh and grating. We have conquered 17 species. We will add your pathetic race to our collection. 20 seconds, Sarah said calmly. Look around you, human. We have 12 dreadnoughts. You have a collection of cargo ships and pleasure craft. Withdraw now and we will grant you a quick death. 10 seconds. The Krex commander gestured to his weapons officer. Destroy the nearest human vessel. Show them the price of defying the Krex. Sarah watched as the tactical display showed energy building in the weapons of the closest Krex dreadnought. The target was Murphy's Revenge, one of Jake's converted cargo haulers. Time's up, Sarah said, and cut the transmission. The Krex dreadnought fired. Massive plasma bolts streaked toward Murphy's Revenge. Captain Murphy, a grizzled veteran of the asteroid wars, watched the incoming fire with professional interest. Well, boys, looks like they want to dance. Let's show them how we party in the belt. Murphy's ship wasn't built for war, but its crew had spent years working in the most dangerous environments in the solar system. They knew how to improvise. As the plasma bolt struck his shields, Murphy triggered his ship's mining charges. Hundreds of explosive devices, each designed to crack open asteroids, launched from Murphy's cargo bay. They spread out in a wide pattern and detonated simultaneously. The space between Murphy's ship and the Krex dreadnought filled with a cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. The Krex ship's sensors went blind. Its targeting systems failed. And through the chaos came Murphy's real surprise: industrial plasma cutters. The same tools used to slice through solid rock, now focused on the dreadnought's armor. "That's for shooting at my ship," Murphy growled as his cutters carved through the Krex vessel's hull like a hot knife through butter. The battle erupted across the entire formation, but it wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration of human creativity applied to violence. The destroyer Henderson launched a spread of torpedoes that split apart just before impact, revealing smaller warheads that could change direction. The Krex point defense systems, designed to stop conventional missiles, couldn't track the chaotic flight patterns. Captain Santos of the mining vessel Rock Crusher had a different approach. Her ship was essentially a mobile factory designed to process asteroids. She simply grabbed the nearest Krex frigate with her industrial manipulator arms and started feeding it into her ore processor. "Processing asteroid designated. Krex 1, she announced cheerfully as metal screamed and tore. The luxury yacht Serendipity proved that money could indeed buy happiness. Marcus Webb had somehow managed to fit military-grade torpedo tubes into his pleasure craft. His targeting system was actually a modified gaming computer that tracked enemy ships like they were targets in a virtual reality game. "High score," Webb shouted as his torpedoes punched through a Krex cruiser's shields. The most spectacular show came from the converted passenger liner New Horizon. Captain Lisa Park had served in the Merchant Marine for 20 years before taking command of the liner. When Sarah asked her to join the mission, Lisa had a simple request. She wanted to ram something. Sarah had pointed out that ramming was typically a last resort. Lisa had grinned. "Admiral, I've been hauling tourists between Earth and Mars for 15 years. Trust me, ramming is my first choice." Now Lisa's ship accelerated toward a Krex dreadnought at maximum burn. The enemy vessel fired everything it had, but New Horizon's hull had been reinforced with armor plating from decommissioned warships. The passenger liner plowed through the incoming fire and struck the Krex ship amidships. The impact split the dreadnought in half. "That's what you get for threatening my passengers," Lisa announced as she backed her damaged but victorious ship away from the wreckage. The Earth destroyer Yamamoto, commanded by Captain Tanaka, took a more traditional approach. His ship had been designed for war and he used its weapons with surgical precision. Laser arrays carved through enemy shields while missile salvos overwhelmed their defenses. But even Tanaka couldn't resist adding his own touch. His ship's computer had been programmed to play classical music during combat. As the destroyer danced through space, avoiding enemy fire and returning it with interest, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony echoed across the communications channels. The Krex had never experienced anything like it. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and intimidation. They would arrive at a system, demonstrate their power, and demand surrender. Most species capitulated immediately. Humans apparently had missed that memo. The human ships didn't just fight, they seemed to enjoy it. They used weapons that shouldn't exist, tactics that made no sense, and displayed a level of enthusiasm that was frankly disturbing. Worse, they were winning. Within 2 hours, 6 Krex dreadnoughts had been destroyed. 2 more were crippled and drifting. The remainder were trying to retreat, but the human ships had them surrounded. The Krex commander, his flagship heavily damaged, sent out a desperate transmission. "We surrender. We surrender."
"Call off your mad warriors!"
Admiral Chen appeared on his screen again, still looking perfectly calm. "Surrender accepted. You will withdraw from Zelani space immediately. Any Krex vessel that returns to this system will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. This will not stand. The Krex Dominion has allies. There will be consequences." Sarah's smile was not entirely pleasant. "I'm counting on it. The galaxy needs to know what happens when you threaten peaceful people. Tell your allies that Earth is watching. Tell them that humans protect those who cannot protect themselves. And tell them that if they want to test us, we'll be happy to arrange a demonstration." The surviving Krek ships limped away into hyperspace, their commander's threats lost in the static of damaged communications equipment. Sarah turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to the Zilani planetary government." The screen filled with the face of Ambassador Tella. The Zilani was crying, not from sadness but from relief. "Admiral Chen, we cannot thank you enough. You saved our world." "That's what neighbors do," Sarah replied. "But I'm afraid this is just the beginning. The Kreks will be back and they'll bring friends. We need to make sure you're ready for them." As the human fleet took up positions around the Zilani homeworld, Sarah looked at the tactical display one more time. The battle had been a complete victory, but she knew it would have consequences far beyond this system. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the loudest possible way. Some species would welcome Earth as a protector. Others would see humans as a threat to be eliminated. Either way, things were about to get very interesting. The battle should have been over. 8 Krek's dreadnoughts destroyed, 3 surrendered, 1 fleeing toward the edge of the system. But the humans weren't finished. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Phoenix watched the retreating Krek ship on his sensors. The enemy vessel was badly damaged, leaking atmosphere and moving at barely half speed. Most commanders would let it go. Rodriguez was not most commanders. Helm intercept course. Maximum burn. "Sir, the ship is clearly retreating. The rules of engagement say—" "The rules of engagement were written by people who never watched aliens murder children," Rodriguez said quietly. "That ship will report back to Krek's command. They'll know our numbers, our capabilities, our tactics. Then they'll come back with everything they have." Phoenix streaked across space toward the fleeing dreadnought. The Krek ship detected the pursuit and tried to accelerate, but its damaged engines couldn't match human fusion drive technology. "Sir, they're sending a surrender signal," the communications officer reported. Too late for that. They had their chance. Rodriguez studied the tactical display. "Weapons target their hyperspace drive. I want them stranded here." The Phoenix's main laser carved through the Krek ship's rear section. Explosions rippled along the hull as the hyperspace drive overloaded and died. The dreadnought was now trapped in normal space, unable to jump to safety. "Sir, they're launching escape pods. Track them. Recovery ships can pick them up later. Right now, I want that ship dead." The destroyer's missiles finished what the laser had started. The Krek's dreadnought broke apart in a silent explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human commanders made sure the lesson was clear. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was a statement. Captain Murphy was having the time of his life. His cargo hauler had already crippled 1 dreadnought with mining charges, but he wasn't done. The Krek ship was still intact, its crew trapped inside a hull that had been breached in 17 places. "This is Captain Murphy of Murphy's Revenge. I'm coming aboard." "Captain," his first officer said carefully, "that's a hostile vessel full of armed aliens." "Exactly. Haven't had a good fight in years." Murphy suited up in his mining armor, a bulky protective suit designed to withstand asteroid impacts and radiation. He added some modifications of his own, a plasma cutter on his right arm, a demolition charge dispenser on his left, and a personal force field generator strapped to his back. "Boys, keep the ship steady. I'll be back in an hour." Murphy jetted across the gap between ships and burned through the Krek's hull with his plasma cutter. The Krek's crew had been expecting to fight other spaceships. Not a human in mining gear who thought boarding actions were recreational activities. The Kreks were tall, but Murphy was built like a tree trunk from years of heavy labor. His armor made him even more massive. When the first group of Krek soldiers tried to stop him, Murphy simply walked through them. Their energy weapons barely scratched his armor, while his plasma cutter went through their carapaces like paper. "You boys picked the wrong species to mess with," Murphy said cheerfully as he carved his way toward the ship's bridge. The Kreks had designed their ships for their own physiology. Tall, thin corridors that accommodated their insectoid bodies. Murphy was too wide for the passages, so he made his own. His plasma cutter carved new doorways wherever he needed them. By the time he reached the bridge, word of the armored human had spread throughout the ship. The remaining crew surrendered immediately. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was discovering that his luxury yacht made an excellent weapons platform. Serendipity had been built for comfort, but Webb's modifications had turned it into something unique. A ship that could launch devastating attacks while serving cocktails. Johnson, Webb called to his pilot. Bring us alongside that cruiser. The one that's trying to run. Sir, our shields are down to 60%. Then we'll have to be creative. Webb turned to his weapons officer, who was actually his bartender. Mix us something special, James. James had been Webb's bartender for 5 years. He made excellent martinis and had a talent for improvisation. When Webb asked him to operate the torpedo systems, James had approached it like mixing drinks. A little of this, a little of that, see what happens. Coming right up. Sir? James's fingers danced over the torpedo controls. I call this one the cosmic surprise. The torpedoes that launched from Serendipity weren't standard military weapons. Webb had purchased them from a demolition company that specialized in breaking up old space stations. Each torpedo contained enough explosive to level a city block. The Krex cruiser's shields held for about 3 seconds, then the ship simply ceased to exist. Excellent work, James. Make us another round. Captain Santos of Rock Crusher was taking a more direct approach to space combat. Her mining ship was essentially a mobile factory, designed to break down asteroids and extract valuable materials. She had decided that Krex ships counted as asteroids. Her current target was a Krex frigate that had made the mistake of getting too close. Rock Crusher's massive manipulator arms designed to handle chunks of rock the size of buildings, wrapped around the smaller ship like a spider grabbing a fly. Processing begins. Now, Santos announced as she activated her ore crusher. The sound that came over the communications channel was indescribable. Metal screaming, systems overloading, and somewhere in the background Santos humming a mining song her grandfather had taught her. The frigate disappeared into Rock Crusher's processing bay. A few minutes later, the ship's waste disposal system ejected a neat cube of compressed metal and electronics. Asteroid processing complete. Moving to next target. The most disturbing display came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who had volunteered to serve as medical officer aboard the research vessel Discovery. When the battle started, she had asked permission to study Krex combat behavior firsthand. Captain Williams had agreed, not understanding what she meant. Now Discovery was drifting alongside a crippled Krex destroyer, and Dr. Vasquez was conducting her research. She had suited up and boarded the enemy ship, but instead of weapons, she carried medical scanners and research equipment. Fascinating. Her voice came over the communications channel. The Krex physiology shows clear adaptations for high-gravity environments. Notice the enhanced carapace structure and redundant organ systems. Doctor, Captain Williams said carefully, are you dissecting live aliens? Oh no, Captain. That would be unethical. I'm simply conducting a detailed biological survey, although several subjects have expired from shock, which is unfortunate but scientifically useful. The surviving Krex crew had barricaded themselves in their ship's central core, but they could hear Dr. Vasquez moving through the corridors, taking notes and occasionally commenting on interesting anatomical features. Note: Krex neural structure appears highly susceptible to psychological stress. Several subjects have entered catatonic states when confronted with detailed analysis of their own biology. By the time the main battle ended, Discovery had a complete biological profile of Krex physiology, and the surviving crew of the enemy destroyer had requested immediate evacuation to any human ship except the one with the scary scientist. Admiral Chen watched it all from the Bridge of Independence. Her fleet had arrived expecting a difficult battle against superior numbers. Instead, they had turned the engagement into something between a military exercise and a demonstration of human creativity. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Park said quietly, I'm receiving surrender signals from all remaining Krex vessels. Accept their surrender. Standard terms. Complete withdrawal from Zelani space, no return without prior authorization. They're also asking for safe passage out of the system. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Krex fleet had been effectively destroyed. 9 ships gone, 3 surrendering, their commander probably writing reports that no one would believe. Grant safe passage. But make sure they understand the conditions. Any Krex ship that enters this system again will be considered hostile. Yes, ma'am. Sarah opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Excellent work, everyone. Stand down from combat alert but maintain defensive positions. We'll be staying here for a while. She turned to her communications officer. Get me a channel to Earth. Command needs to know what just happened. As the surviving Krex ships limped toward the edge of the system, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The battle had been a complete victory, but more importantly, it had been a message. Word would spread throughout the galaxy about what had happened here. Some species would be terrified. Others would be hopeful. But everyone would know that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they weren't interested in playing by the old rules. The Zilani world below was safe. The Krex Dominion had learned a painful lesson. And somewhere in the depths of space, other predatory species were about to discover that the galaxy had new protectors, and they weren't the polite, diplomatic kind. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Battle of Zilani. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber orbiting Nexus Prime, the Council's neutral headquarters. The mood was tense. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the defendant's chair, a simple metal seat in the center of the chamber. Around her, in elaborate floating platforms that accommodated different alien physiologies, the representatives whispered and argued in dozens of languages. Counselor Vex, the tall gray alien who served as session moderator, called for order. His voice echoed through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "We are here to address the actions of the human fleet in the Zilani system. The charges are severe. Violation of proportional response protocols, excessive use of force, and unauthorized military intervention in a sovereign territory dispute." Sarah almost laughed at that last one. Sovereign territory dispute. The Krex had been systematically exterminating entire colonies. But the Council was calling it a territorial dispute. The prosecution was led by Counselor Thex, a reptilian alien whose species had been allied with the Krex for decades. His scales gleamed blue-green under the chamber's lights as he gestured dramatically. "Honored Council, the humans have committed an act of unprecedented aggression. They destroyed 9 Krex vessels, killed thousands of soldiers, and violated every principle of civilized conflict resolution." Thex activated a holographic display, showing the battle. The images were taken from Krex sensors, showing human ships appearing from nowhere and immediately opening fire. Observe their tactics. No attempt at communication, no offer to negotiate. They appeared and began slaughtering without warning. Sarah's lawyer, a human diplomat named David Park, stood up. Objection. The record clearly shows that Admiral Chen offered the Krex 30 seconds to withdraw. That constitutes proper warning under Article 15 of the Galactic Peace Accords. 30 seconds. Thex's voice rose to a hiss. 30 seconds to make a decision about territorial claims that had been disputed for months. This was clearly intended as an ultimatum, not a genuine offer to negotiate. The holographic display continued, showing the destruction of Krex ships. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched Murphy's cargo hauler carve through a dreadnought with mining equipment. "Look at their weapons," Thex continued. "Industrial tools used for violence. Mining charges designed to break asteroids, now used to kill living beings. This is the behavior of barbarians, not civilized people." Counselor Zara, a ethereal being of living energy who represented the peaceful luminari, spoke in tones like wind chimes. "The human response does seem disproportionate. Perhaps mediation would have been more appropriate." Sarah had been sitting quietly, but now she stood. "May I address the council?" Vex nodded. "The defendant has the right to speak." Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species she had never seen before. Some seemed sympathetic, others appeared hostile. Most just looked confused. Honored counselors, 3 weeks ago the Zilani sent a distress signal across the galaxy. They reported that the Krex had destroyed 4 of their colonies and were preparing to attack their homeworld. They begged for help. She paused, letting that sink in. The council's response was to form a committee that would study the situation for 6 months before making a recommendation. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. In those 6 months, how many Zilani would have died? Their population is only 8 billion. The Krex were killing 1 million civilians per day. "Do the math," Counselor Thex interrupted. The proper response was diplomatic pressure. Economic sanctions, not military intervention. Tell me, Counselor, how do you apply diplomatic pressure to a species that considers genocide a valid military tactic? How do you negotiate with beings who see other sentient species as resources to be harvested? Sarah activated her own holographic display. Images appeared showing Krex attacks on defenseless colonies, burning cities, refugee ships destroyed as they tried to flee, children's bodies in the wreckage of schools. This is what the Kreks do. They did it to the Marani 5 years ago. The council formed a committee. The Marani are extinct. They did it to the Volani 2 years ago. The council imposed economic sanctions that took 8 months to implement. The Volani are extinct. The chamber fell silent. The images continued to cycle, showing the results of Kreks' expansion across their territory. The humans didn't start this war. We finished it. We prevented genocide, and if that makes us barbarians in your eyes, then I accept that label with pride. Counselor Mora, a crystalline being whose species had been allies of the Zilani, spoke in harmonious tones. But surely there were alternatives to such. Explosive intervention? What alternatives? Sarah asked. The Kreks had given the Zilani 12 hours to surrender or face complete extermination. Should we have asked them to wait while we filed the proper paperwork? The established protocols exist for good reason, Vex said carefully. Without proper procedures, we risk escalating conflicts beyond control. The conflict was already beyond control. The Kreks were committing genocide. Alleged genocide, Vex corrected. The Kreks were enforcing legitimate territorial claims. Sarah stared at him. Legitimate territorial claims? They were demanding the complete surrender of an independent species. When the Zilani refused, the Kreks started killing civilians. How is that legitimate? The Kreks presented evidence of historical settlements in Zilani space dating back. Counselor Thex, a new voice, interrupted. It was soft and musical, speaking perfect standard. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Tella of the Zilani Confederation rising from her platform. Tella was small even by Zilani standards, barely 5 feet tall with pale blue skin and large silver eyes. She looked fragile next to the massive aliens around her, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. May I present some evidence to the council? Vex nodded. The victim species has the right to testify. Tella activated her own holographic display. Numbers appeared in the air above the chamber floor. Stark, simple mathematics. Kreks territorial claims, 847 systems. Historical evidence of settlement, 23 systems. Percentage of legitimate claims, 2.7%. The numbers changed. Zilani population before Kreks attacks, 8.2 billion. Zilani population after 4 colony destructions, 6.1 billion. Projected population if attacks continued, 0 within 23 standard days. More numbers appeared. Council committee formation time, 6 standard days. Committee study period, 180 standard days. Committee recommendation implementation time, 90 standard days. Total time for council response, 276 standard days. Tella looked directly at Counselor Thex. The Kreks gave us 12 hours. The council wanted 276 days. Simple mathematics shows that we would have been extinct 275 days before your help arrived. The chamber was completely silent. The humans gave us something the council could not. Hope. They arrived when we needed them most. They asked for nothing in return. They risked their own lives to save strangers they had never met. Tella's voice grew stronger. You call them barbarians? They are the most civilized beings I have ever encountered. True civilization is not about following procedures. It is about protecting the innocent. She sat down. The silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, Counselor Mora spoke. The mathematics are compelling, but the precedent this sets is concerning. If every species begins using force to resolve disputes, every species already uses force, Sarah interrupted. The Kreks used it to conquer 17 civilizations. The difference is that humans use force to protect people, not enslave them. And what guarantee do we have that humans will limit themselves to protective actions? Asked Counselor Emir, a massive being whose species resembled walking trees. What prevents you from becoming conquerors yourselves? Sarah smiled. Because we already had the chance and chose not to take it. My fleet destroyed the Kreks force completely. We could have proceeded to Krek space and demanded their surrender. We could have made them our subjects. Instead, we stayed to protect the Zilani and are here talking to you. That proves nothing, Thex hissed. One action does not establish a pattern. Then look at our history, Sarah said. Humans have been spacefaring for over a century. We have colonies on dozens of worlds. How many species have we conquered? How many civilizations have we enslaved? The answer hung in the air. 0. We could have taken what we wanted by force, Sarah continued. We chose trade instead. We chose diplomacy. We chose cooperation. But when peaceful people are threatened, we will choose war. Counselor Vex called for a recess. The representatives needed time to consider the evidence and arguments. As the chamber emptied, Ambassador Tella approached Sarah. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For giving us the right to exist." Sarah put her hand on the small alien's shoulder. "That's not a right anyone should have to fight for. But as long as there are predators in the galaxy, there will be humans standing between them and their prey." When the session resumed, the vote was closer than Sarah had expected. 24 species voted to censure humanity for excessive force. 23 voted to commend Earth for preventing genocide. In the end, the Council issued both a formal censure and a Medal of Honor. The humans were officially disapproved of and officially celebrated in the same document. But the real victory wasn't in the count 6 months after the Battle of Zilani. The galaxy was a different place. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the new joint human-Zilani facility orbiting the Zilani homeworld. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see construction ships putting the finishing touches on the military academy's training grounds. A complex array of asteroid fields, weapons ranges, and tactical simulation areas. "The first class reports for duty tomorrow," Ambassador Tella said, joining Sarah at the window. The small Zilani had been appointed as the Academy's diplomatic liaison, responsible for coordinating between human instructors and alien students. "How many species signed up?" 37, Tella replied with satisfaction, "including some that surprised us. The Morlani submitted an application yesterday." Sarah raised an eyebrow. The Morlani were a proud warrior culture that had never asked anyone for help. What changed their minds? The Kreks tested their defenses last month. 3 dreadnoughts appeared at the edge of Morlani space, performed sensor sweeps, then jumped away. The Morlani leadership decided they needed to learn human tactics. Through the window, Sarah watched a group of Zilani engineers working alongside human technicians to install defense platforms around the station. The cooperation was remarkable. 2 species with completely different physiologies and cultures working together, as if they had done it for years. "How are the Kreks handling their new situation?" Sarah asked. Tella's expression grew more serious. "Not well. Their expansion has stopped completely. 3 species they had targeted for conquest have signed defense treaties with Earth. The Kreks tried to attack the Fenari system 2 weeks ago. And Captain Rodriguez happened to be in the area with a patrol squadron. The Kreks fleet withdrew after losing 2 cruisers to warning shots." Sarah smiled. Rodriguez had always had a liberal interpretation of what constituted a warning shot. The communication system chimed, and Captain Park's voice filled the observation deck. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Put it through here." The holographic display activated, showing the face of General Morrison. He looked tired but satisfied. "Sarah, I have news. The Hegemony War is over." Sarah felt a moment of surprise. The Hegemony War had been raging for 3 years on the other side of the galaxy. The Thraxi Hegemony, a militaristic empire similar to the Kreks, had been systematically conquering smaller species. The Galactic Council had been trying to negotiate a peaceful resolution. How did it end? The Hegemony surrendered yesterday. Unconditional surrender to the coalition of free worlds. That's unexpected. The coalition was outnumbered 3-1. Morrison smiled grimly. They were. Then 17 species that had never cooperated before suddenly started working together. They used human-designed tactics, human-supplied weapons, and human-trained officers. The Hegemony didn't know what hit them. Sarah understood. The Battle of Zilani had done more than save 1 species. It had shown the galaxy that the old rules no longer applied. Predatory empires could no longer count on their victims being isolated and helpless. "The coalition wants to thank Earth officially," Morrison continued. "They're sending a delegation to propose a formal alliance, something they're calling the Defensive Federation. Membership requirements? No expansion through conquest. No slavery. No genocide. Mutual defense against aggressors. Voluntary membership only." It sounded like something humans could support. What's the Council's reaction? Officially, they're concerned about the militarization of galactic politics. Unofficially, half their members are asking about joining the Federation. After Morrison signed off, Sarah and Tella walked through the station's main corridor. The hallway was filled with beings from dozens of species. Students arriving for the academy, diplomats negotiating new treaties, and military personnel sharing tactical knowledge. A group of young Zilani were clustered around Captain Murphy, who was demonstrating how to modify mining equipment for combat use. The captain's enthusiasm was infectious and his audience hung on every word. Now the key to using explosives in space is timing, Murphy was explaining. You want to catch the enemy when they're not expecting it, like when they think they're safe behind their shields. Nearby, Dr. Vasquez was conducting a xenobiology seminar for medical officers from 12 different species. Her research on Krek's physiology had proven invaluable for developing non-lethal weapons and defensive strategies. The important thing to remember, she was saying, is that every species has vulnerabilities. Not to exploit them, but to understand them. When you know what your enemies fear, you can protect yourself more effectively. In the station's tactical center, Commander Santos was teaching asteroid mining techniques to a mixed class of humans and aliens. Her students were learning how industrial equipment could be adapted for military use. The beautiful thing about mining tools, Santos explained, is that they're designed to be efficient. They cut through the hardest materials, move massive objects, and operate in the most dangerous environments. Perfect for dealing with hostile spacecraft. Sarah paused at the viewing gallery overlooking the main training floor. Below, human instructors were working with alien students on basic combat maneuvers. The sight was remarkable. Beings who had never fought anyone learning to defend themselves from species who had seemed invincible just months ago. It's working, Tella said quietly. The galaxy is changing. For the better. The Kreks attacked 18 species in the past 5 years. In the 6 months since Harmony Station opened, they have attacked 0. That seems better to me, Sarah's personal communicator chimed. She activated it to find Marcus Webb's face on the small screen. The billionaire was calling from his yacht, which was currently docked at the station. Admiral, I have some interesting news. I just received a proposal from a consortium of peaceful species. They want to hire human protection services. Hire us. Think of it as a subscription service. They pay Earth a fee, and we guarantee that if anyone attacks them, a human fleet will respond within 72 hours. They're calling it the Guardian Protocol. Sarah considered the implications. How many species? So far 43. But the number is growing daily. The fee structure alone would fund Earth's entire military budget twice over. It was an interesting idea. Earth had never been interested in building an empire, but serving as the galaxy's protector was appealing. It would give humanity purpose and provide resources for expansion and development. I'll discuss it with Command, Sarah said. That evening, Sarah stood alone on the observation deck watching the stars. The Zilani homeworld turned slowly below, its cities glowing like jewels in the darkness. In the distance, she could see the lights of human patrol ships maintaining their watchful guard. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a young human officer, Lieutenant Hayes, fresh from Earth's Naval Academy. He saluted smartly. Admiral, the night patrol reports all quiet. No unusual contacts, no threats detected. Thank you, Lieutenant. Any word from the Krex border? Yes, ma'am. Long-range sensors detected a Krex fleet massing near the Thol system. Intelligence estimates 12 dreadnoughts and supporting vessels. Sarah frowned. The Thol were a peaceful species of aquatic beings who had recently signed a defense treaty with Earth. Any sign they're planning to move against Thol space? Unknown, ma'am. But Captain Rodriguez has positioned his squadron at the border. If the Krex try anything, they'll get the same reception as last time. Sarah nodded. The Krex had been testing boundaries for months, probing to see if human resolve was weakening. So far, they had found the opposite. Every test had been met with overwhelming force and creative violence. Ma'am, Hayes continued, if I may ask a question? Go ahead. Why do we do this? Protect aliens we barely know? Risk our lives for species that used to ignore us? Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. It was one she had asked herself many times. Because someone has to, she said finally. For too long, the strong have preyed on the weak while the galaxy looked the other way. The Council talks about peace while genocides happen. Most species are too afraid or too weak to stand up to bullies. She gestured toward the planet below. The Zilani make beautiful art and solve mathematical problems that advance science. The Fenari compose music that can make you cry. The Morlani write poetry that captures the essence of honor and courage. All of these contributions to galactic civilization would have been lost if we hadn't acted. But at what cost to us? What cost? We've gained allies, trading partners, and friends. We've established ourselves as a major power in galactic politics, and we've given meaning to our military. We're not just preparing for hypothetical threats anymore. We're actively making the galaxy a safer place. Hayes nodded slowly. I think I understand. As the young officer left, Sarah returned to watching the stars. In the distance, she could see the running lights of ships from dozens of species, all protected by the growing network of human-trained defense forces. The galaxy was indeed changing. Predatory empires now had to consider the consequences of their actions. Peaceful species no longer faced extinction alone, and humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as guardians. It wasn't the role il chamber. Within hours,